important to note that these things are not inevitable, right? They're a result of policy. But Assal, I think you're trying to get in with a comment. So
Well,
go
I
ahead.
mean, first of all, I agree with Giorgio in the sense that this sort of polarization that we're seeing was not an inevitability. It didn't have to be the way that things went. And whether you're talking about it from the perspective of Russia and Ukraine, or whether you're talking about it from the perspective of Iran being like shifting its gaze from the West towards Russia, towards China, in certain ways, the US has forced these situations, right? The US sanctioning Iran, abandoning the deal, undermining moderate and reformist voices in the country who have tried multiple times over the last several decades to engage with the West, to engage specifically with the United States, that has been rebuffed by the US. I mean, there's no question to that fact, right? The fact that the reason why we are in any kind of crisis with Iran currently in terms of the nuclear deal is because the United States left the deal, not because Iran did. That's a direct quote from Joe Biden himself. So the way that things have become somewhat polarized is very much because of the decision making that you're seeing coming from Washington. But something else that's interesting about like this sort of Cold War rhetoric is it sort of shows the transparency of the Cold War itself, right? The whole notion of the Cold War, what made the Soviet Union the evil empire, and why we use this sort of like ridiculous rhetoric of there's evil and then there's good, as if it's not just people, nation states with trying to get their own national interests and their own political gains, is that we were fighting communism, right? That was the Cold War, the evil of communism. Well, they're not communists now, right? I mean, that's very clear. Russia is not a communist state. So the fact that we're falling back into this sort of Cold War rhetoric shows that was never really the issue. The issue is about power. The issue is about resources. The issue is about, how we create, how empires compete. And that's been long the problem in the way that we talk about foreign policy, because while we use rhetoric like, international rules-based orders and human rights, and it's great to say all these things, we undermine them consistently. Because in fact, we don't care about international rules. We don't care about international orders or human rights. And the sort of juxtaposition, when you look at the image and the way that it was framed, you had Erdogan, Khamenei, and Putin on one side, and then you had, I think it's Lapid, Biden, and MBS on the other, right? You have this idea that these are like the poles. And again, remember, one side is evil and one side is good, except that the people on the good side, the quote, good side, are carrying out war crimes, are occupying millions of people, are carrying out apartheid, are funding all of these things, are murdering journalists. We can keep pretending like that is the frame, but that's not the reality on the ground. And so that's the underlying problem with it. So when you see an image of why it's played up, oh, Vladimir Putin is in Iran, it's because it's trying to play up on those images of they are all evil, they are all bad, and look, all the bad guys are getting together, and look, we're the good guys getting together. And that totally is so far-fetched from the reality that we're facing. Not to mention the fact, and that's what we said earlier, which is a lot of these alignments are occurring because of US decisions and actions.